This is Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley, a podcast that explores the feelings, emotions, and experiences of what it means to be human in this world. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references if you need support.
And before you dive in, please like, subscribe, comment, share with anyone you think might also connect with today's session. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible, and we are endlessly grateful for your continued support. So, let's get to it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. I'm Ashley.
I'm Sara Cate.
Well, you guys won't be listening to this on Valentine's Day. I was going to tell you all happy Valentine's Day. I love Valentine's Day.
I don't. So guess what? You're going to get the ultimate dual perspective.
Yeah. Because I am just a lover of love and I want everybody to show love every day. And on days like today, I don't care if you think it's corny, like give me all of the balloons. Because it's a celebration of love. And I just don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that's where I stand. But today,
I respect Ashley's perspective. I respect Ashley's opinion. Do I have a different one? Yes. I'm not here to share it.
Okay.
Go ahead, go on.
Well, I love you.
I love you. That doesn't change any day of the year.
All right. So last week we had an episode about dating, specifically like online dating and some nuances with that. I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, it was fun. I picked Ashley's brain.
Yeah.
About her experiences.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of dove into like the psychology, the kind of crazy psychology of what online dating is.
Yeah.
So today
it's like kind of a continuation, but like shifting. So not in particular to like just online dating. We're going to talk about like, how do you figure out like what to trust in your body, how to listen to that? Like what I'm getting really excited, or am I just getting triggered? Am I super, super excited and this is really good? Or is this like the red flags? My wound is connecting to their wound and here we are. And when I say that, you might be thinking like, what the fuck is she even talking about? That's what you're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sara Cate.
Yeah.
Triggers.
And excitement and red flags. Because something that I think where I want to start this conversation is compassion.
Always.
For the process in which falling in love, being in love, falling out of love, getting hurt in love, finding love again, how intense that can be and how difficult it can be. And if we have not had healthy models of relationship through a good portion of our life or in the early portion of our life, or even if we have had healthy models of relationship and we still have found ourselves to have a difficult time in relationship, or it doesn't just get to where we want it to be, or we are in a relationship and we're having a hard time setting boundaries within that. All of that comes up when we start talking about love. And when we start talking about it, when we start talking about love, it is going to bring up old wounds and of like our imprint and our first understanding.
Right? Yeah. So this is in the couple episodes ago, we were talking about the misattuned caregiver.
Yes.
And Sara Cate brought up Gabor Mate, which I'll tag him again. He's tagged in the last show notes as well. But he talked about how, when he was a doctor originally, how he was telling people that like babies could self-soothe. And now we have these generations, like Sara Cate mentioned, of these babies who were treated as if they could self-soothe. And now we're seeing in our adult life the results of that, of us. Yeah, the attachment issues has become this like big popular cool thing to like talk about. there's some real
science
behind that. I think that people can talk about it kind of irresponsibly a lot, or like just like blame shit on it. It can get a little,
or her anxious attachment styles coming out. Like we can use it to kind of shame
as like
people.
a weaponizing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But it is something that is important to think about, because as she's talking about the compassion for that process of wherever you're at in that process, wherever you want to be in that process, whether it's, the falling in love, the being in relationship, falling out of love and being okay with that, and then finding love again, there are some very real, deep wounds that will be opened with that. And I don't, I guess, again, like Sara Cate and I just want to have conversations that like aren't always being had, and we want to provide you with support and resource for that. So just keep that in mind, and we'll tag Gabor Mate, because if you want to dive deeper into that, he's an incredible resource for it.
Right. And to really work with that, and then we had a conversation about self-soothing, right? And like becoming these adults who can actually care for ourselves and take care of our bodies and listen to those parts of ourselves that are aching and longing and sad and scared or whatever it might be. But to again, just come back to that compassion piece of like, if you have dated someone with a million red flags, okay, right? I have, okay? There were red flags at every juncture, and I just kept pedaling down the road. And there are times where we want it to be different. And so we let ourselves believe it's going to be different, or we listen to what they're saying. What is that quote by, when they tell you when they show you who they are, believe them?
Yeah. When
Something
they show
like
you
that.
who you are,
believe
who they are, believe them.
Believe them, right? Because people can tell us a lot of really incredible things. They can say all the right things and do all the right things. And guess what? When we want something, when we want love and connection and partnership, sometimes we just hear that because it's like, oh God, it's going to be what I thought it was going to be. It was going to be what I want it to be. And so if you have been there, as I have, as I'm sure Ashley has, if you have been there, right? Like give yourself some grace and some compassion for the fact that like, this isn't a conversation to say you've done it wrong and here's what you watch out for. This is just a conversation to say, be gentle with your heart, learn from what you can learn from, use it for your good and your purpose of expanding as best you can. And you might do it 6 more times or 10 more times.
Yeah.
And if you ultimately hear yourself more and more and more, and you develop yourself more and more and more to be in relationship to those feelings and those sensations that actually tell you what your intuition really of what feels like a yes. Okay. Then all of those 6 times of heartbreak, or 10 times or 20 or 50, whatever, might just be worth it if on the 51st time it's with somebody who is there. And you're trusting your gut to say, oh yeah, I can believe them. I can trust them. It's worth it.
Totally. And I think, when she says that, on the 51st time, then it will be worth it. I think one thing that is also like maybe pushed is that you have to be like, quote, healed before
this one.
Wow.
This one rubs me the wrong way.
Sara Cate has strong feelings about that. So do I.
Yeah, you have to be whole to be in a relationship.
And often what happens is that one that makes it worth it is where you realize that healing happens in relationship. And that doesn't mean that we stop doing our own work, right? Like that doesn't, especially if that's something that's important to you, like continuing to grow and be the best version of yourself.
To grow together.
And like having compassion for your ups and downs on that journey, having somebody in your life who's also invested in that so that you can then be invested in that together. I think that, is just something, I mean, I wasn't taught that. Nobody talked to me about how important that would be. People just wanted to know, like, what was on my list. Right. And like, as I've shifted throughout my life, like my list has changed. Right. But nobody talks about like those things that are could be on your list that might really give you a different perspective when you are dating somebody new to decide how far you want to go into that relationship.
Yeah, I love that kind of I was just on the phone with my best friend this morning, and we were talking about like the complexity of what it means to um be human. Really, it's what we got down to. I was like, it's not, being human's not normal. I don't know what normal is, but we were talking about like the sense of longing and this sense of desire for partnership and what that brings up in our body. And a lot of the times we try to avoid it because it's painful. Being lonely, feeling lonely is painful. Feeling like this is an uphill battle to meet somebody that you can trust and that's going to treat you well can feel really daunting and exhausting because there's a lot of shit out there when it comes to relationship. Like there's a lot of pain. We do things and we say things and we don't do things, and that makes us incongruent, and that incongruence can hurt somebody. And I've been incongruent in my life. I've hurt people in relationship, right? And so like the knowing that trying to do this thing is going to be difficult is kind of like that first acceptance piece, that like wanting love and exploring love and being in love are all very hard things. And so these sensations that we're going to talk about, and like trusting between the two, it's a hard thing to discern. This is a really difficult kind of experience to explore to some degree, because it's easy to ignore a red flag when we want something to be as good as we think it could be. And so sometimes avoiding these things and ignoring these signs might actually be a choice that we make to say, and to Ashley's point, every experience we live builds us more and more awareness around what we might want and who we are. And, growing into who you are and trusting those sensations when you feel them, even if you ignore them, right? Because feeling them and acting on that and saying, okay, this is what I'm feeling, so I shouldn't do this, I'm not going to do it. Compared to this sense of like trust of, okay, I did feel that. I am hesitant right now, and I'm going to go anyway. That's still your agency. I'm going to explore this anyway. That's your agency, because it is, either way, it's going to give you information. Is maybe the process of getting through that information going to be a little bit more difficult or a little bit more uncomfortable? Maybe. And okay, explore it, evolve, let it be for you if you can. And, obviously we're not having conversations about staying with abusive partners or, allowing disrespect and those kinds of things. We're talking more in the kind of moderate experience of just like ghosting or inconsistency, or I'm trying to think. Ashley and I just did a thing on dabbling on dating in our last session. And when we were talking about it, we were kind of exploring some of the things that happen, right, and occur in the dating world that don't feel good, that don't feel like I'm getting what I want, And so sometimes, again, we ignore or step around the red flags or
maybe
worries.
we see the red flags and think it's like a circus, it's going to be so fun.
Right. Let me pick them up and wave them around. So go ahead.
If I'm talking to Sara Cate about something, right? And she's saying some things about this other person that she's dating. And in my head, I'm like, that's maybe something to be concerned about. And she's not concerned, right? There's a difference between, again, like her being in danger or something, right? Like, obviously, that's not what we're talking about here. But like, there's a difference between me being like, hey, these are some things you might want to think about, and me being like, don't do it. Because that's her experience to have. She's got to have her lived experience, right? And this is true for relationship or jobs or anything.
Anything we want to do.
The only way we're going to learn how to have more agency and to be more in line with what our true, authentic desires are is if we have an opportunity to figure that out.
Mhm.
And so when you realize that maybe you did ignore some red flags and it came around and turned out to be something that was like really a deal breaker in that relationship, that's not a failure. That's not
No.
a you did something wrong. This is like a hey, I am so clear now on what I want in the next relationship. And that's what I'm going to take forward. It also doesn't mean that that person that you were in relationship with is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it didn't work out or just because they had these red flags or like whatever it was, right? And I think that's also something that happens because Sara Cate said, right? Like being human is just not normal. None of us have walked down the same path. None of us, and she said this before the episode, like none of us are even on the path that we anticipated we would be on. Or if you are, please reach out because we'd love to meet you.
Bottle it up and sell
like,
it.
Let's chat, right? And so there's just, as you're moving through this,
Yes.
there's just no right or wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
It is just
the next way.
Yeah. And like, how can you, along with that, how can you find compassion and connection to yourself as you're learning these things? Because there are things that I learned about myself that were like really hard to digest because I told myself for so long that this is what I wanted and this is what I was going to do. And then it turns out that that's not actually what I wanted. And then it was like this whole like, okay, but I told people that that's what I wanted. I told people that this is what I was going to do or how I felt and then I'm like changing, but like you get to change your mind at any time.
100%. And I think what Ashley was saying about like the words that I love that you just used were moving through. Like nothing is an end point.
Yeah,
nothing,
literally nothing.
This endings come with beginnings. And it might not be the ending we want. It might not be the beginning that we want. But nonetheless, one will come. Right? You will walk yourself into another chapter. You will walk yourself into another moment. And, you know, the reality of, you know, I've said this before to a client, like it blows my mind, the resilience of the human heart, where we can be so incredibly hurt in love and choose to do it again anyways. You know, there's a lot of things that we do in life that once we've done and it didn't work out well, or it was scary or uncomfortable, we don't do it again. But love, kind of generally speaking, is one of the things that we consistently go back towards, even though we've been remarkably hurt in that arena. And it gives me a hell of a lot of courage to watch people do that. It very much is inspiring to me that we can keep going. And so being able to sit with ourselves enough to say, okay, what are these things that I'm feeling? Am I going to listen to them right now? Am I not? Am I wanting maybe a little bit of adventure? Am I wanting a little bit of like chaos or fun? Like, I actually think it's being honest about that rather than it's saying, no, I'm going to listen to the red flags. That's important. I think it's honoring what choice you want to make, not gaslighting yourself and being like, oh, I think it's going to be different this time. It's like, oh no, it's probably going to be the same. And I want to go towards that. I want a little bit of that zest in my life, right? Again, not in a dangerous situation, hopefully, but like, I'm not really, for me, for a long time, I was not ready for committed relationship. I just wasn't. It was not there for me. I was still working through a lot of my wounding. So a lot of the things that I got into were very casual, and casual is hard to some degree, even if it's what you choose. The inconsistency can be hard. The confusion of it can be hard. the living in the ambiguity of like, okay, well, we're not together, but we're kind of together, whatever it might be, can just be hard.
Yeah.
Even if it was what I chose at that time, because that is it's what I needed. Right. And so paying attention to those, for me, the difference, let's just say, between a red flag and questioning, right? Because I think there's a big distinction between those two things that we don't really allow both to kind of be there. Of like, a red flag means this is like a very obvious disconnect. This is a very obvious concern, or this is blatant to me. Right? That for me tends to be like a gut knowing, right? That hits in my gut. It's hard. It's stuck. Like, it's very immobile in my stomach. Curiosity, right, is kind of like, I wonder if that's going to be a thing. I wonder, like, it almost like, it gives me like when a dog turns their head because they're trying to figure out what you're saying. Like, that's what my body feels like. And I'm like, what is it? There's a very different experience. It's a little bit more bubbly. It's a little bit lighter, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't potentially also still be a red flag. It's just, I don't have enough information yet.
Yes.
To feel like I know. And then again, and then I can know, and I can still do. That's my agency, right? That's my choice to go towards that thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, I just had a full entire session with a client yesterday about gaining information and how do we gain information. We were specifically talking about relationship with a partner. That then turned into like relationship with self, right? Because ultimately, what Sara Cate is saying is that she didn't like those things. She might not have enough information from that person of, is this going to be a thing? Right? Or is this just something that they're presenting? This is like one of their wounds that's presenting, and they're actively seeking how they're going to best move through that. Right? Because that could be then totally a green flag.
Right.
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 But what she's saying is she didn't have enough information. And as you are gaining information about the partners that you're contemplating relationship with or in relationship with, the most important thing to remember is that the information that you gain about yourself and about the sensations that you feel in your body and about what those needs are, transform into, move away from, move towards, that's the most important information that you're going to get. And that's exactly like what Sara Cate said.
Is that my French name?
Ooh. Oui, oui.
I knew it would have to come in somewhere.
Sometime.
The French theme of the season.
Yeah. That's the agency.
Yes.
And when you walk into any situation, relationship with a romantic partner, relationship with a friend, with a coworker, blah, 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 whatever. When you walk into a situation with agency, that's where like the real magic and the real connection and the real authenticity is going to get to be like on display. And that is, again, we're all on a path, we're all on a journey, and it's never what we think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Although I wish it could be. Like, please just tell me to show up at this French cafe at this time on this day. Right? Like, as much as I wish that could happen, I wouldn't know myself the way I do now if it was like that.
And I think, like, to be quite transparent, I think that had someone met me early 30s, I would have been a soccer field of red flags.
For sure.
Like,
same.
I would have.
Same.
They would have been throwing them out left and right because I was so in my process. Now, again, you know, I want to highlight, it doesn't mean that I couldn't have been in relationship to somebody who was wanting to be a part of that journey with me. I was just very self-protected. That was my choice, right? That's where I probably the first time in the entirety of my life, that was the first moment where I felt full agency to be like, I do not want to date. That is actually true to me, or be in a relationship rather. That was a truth to me. And while there was still pain in that, while I knew eventually I wanted to be loved in this lifetime and have a deeply wonderful, intimate partnership, it just wasn't the space for me in that moment. And so I had to sit with kind of both of those things, knowing I wanted it and knowing I wasn't there yet for myself. And, you know, to recognize that, like, red flags don't have to be impasses, and they don't have to be blocks if the person that is carrying them is self-aware enough to recognize their responsibility to them, right? If you bring something to them and say, hey, you know, this is let's bring up attachment styles, right? Like, let's say for you, not hearing from someone consistently is difficult. And so you could make the statement, well, red flag is they never text me. You know, they don't text me every day. And if you were to bring that to that person and say, hey, I'm really enjoying this, and I'm curious if this would be something, you know, if it feels like too much or too little, what does it feel like for us to maybe have a point of contact every day? Right? To just bring that to them. And if they can say, absolutely not, that's too much, overwhelm, okay, you listen. And then you take that information, as Ashley said, back to yourself and go, is this okay for me? Can I be okay with not having a point of contact every day? And if the answer is no, then play with that. Okay, well then what am I willing, how long, does it feel good to still stay? Okay, yes, it does. So then you explore, right? But this is where we listen to our body piece by piece and then enact that agency in that moment.
Yeah. I'm gonna shout out Sara Cate here.
No, but
because there was a session that we were in, like I was her client, working through some shit. Probably crying.
Okay, let's just be very clear. There wasn't a session for either one of us where she was my client and I was her patient that we didn't weep.
Right, that's true. That's accurate.
I can say with 100% certainty, it was 100% of the time tears were shed. Keep going.
In the best way.
In the best, most healing, therapeutic way.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things she said to me was, you know, Ashley, you don't have to know right now. But when you know, you'll know, and you'll be ready either to move forward on your own, or they will have decided to come along with you. And then you'll know. But right now, you don't have to rush yourself to figure that out. And it was one of the best things, because I knew this was a very casual, I don't even know what you call it, thing.
Situation.
Yeah. And I knew that I didn't want to be there long term. Like, I knew that, and I still couldn't like make that decision right away, you know? But then when it got to the point where like because I'm like gaining all of these things, seeing things like Sara Cate said, where there wasn't like the self-awareness on the other person's part, and there were conversations about it. And so it wasn't that I wasn't aware of these things, but then it just got to the point where I decided, I knew that like, okay, I wasn't going to be okay with this particular thing, but I still was staying, right? Like I was still engaging in this situationship. And then it got to the point where I was like, actually, no, here's my mark here. This isn't okay anymore. And now I'm going to take the steps I need to take to no longer be part of it. And if I would have, you know, before that, like I said, because I like knew that like it wasn't probably going to be like a forever thing. If I would have forced myself to make decisions, make moves before I felt it in my body, it just tends to be a little bit messier. It just tends to be maybe not something that holds up. You know, I
Or
needed
maybe you have
to,
to work more discomfort through.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I let myself
Mm-hmm.
like have that opportunity to really sit and feel
Mm-hmm.
instead of being like, because I think, you know, like in our society, it's like, we got to go, 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 go. And like all of these things are supposed to happen super fast and we're supposed to make decisions really fast. And I was just like, no, I just need to slow down. I just need to take a step back. I just need to be present in this moment with myself and with my body. And then Sara Cate so beautifully told me, don't,
I mean,
we're going to practice, Sara Cate. We're going to
receiving.
practice.
Should we do a session on that?
Yes, we should. But then she so graciously said, like, you don't have to decide right now. And like,
Freedom.
I would tell people that.
Yeah.
Like, of course, like that is so logically understandable for me to think about that with somebody else. Somebody telling me that, I was like, oh,
I mean,
you're so
it's
right.
so hard to hear and take our own medicine, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so, it's sometimes just easier to be able to say it out towards a direction away from you, than to like give that self-compassion when you're in that process, right? Because let's be clear, no one, even Gabor Mate, even Esther Perel, who are like relationship gurus to me, they probably still have had to learn and walk through discomfort in relationship to be able to understand it. And I think all of us out there are evolving every minute. Every transaction that we experience in the world relationally is another bit of information. And so thinking that we're supposed to know, right? Because I think something that breaks my heart a lot, it breaks my heart for myself too. Look at me receiving. It breaks my heart for myself too when I have the belief that I should have known, that I did something wrong, that I failed, that I should have known. I should have seen it.
Yep.
Right. Because to some degree, I probably did. I probably felt something that I ignored, but I have been taught to ignore what I have felt for a very long time based off of how I should be, who I should be, what I should do. Right. And so why, as this adult woman, would I all of a sudden have all of this trust in what I feel and feel enough security in myself to then say, no, I don't need it. I'm not going to listen to that. Right? That takes time for us to develop a sense of security in ourselves and a relationship of trust to our sensations to start to decide to maybe do things differently every once in a while. And I would still even say there are times that I self-abandon, even in relationship or in friendship or with my family, whatever it is, where I self-abandon and I go towards my pattern of like doing X, Y, or Z because it's still there. It's still ingrained that like, if I don't do it right, I'll be alone. If I don't do what I'm supposed to do, I won't belong. Right. And that's that abandonment. That's that deep, deep fear of being alone. And that comes from our primal attachment stuff.
Yeah.
And so trying to have like, when we see a red flag and we ignore a red flag, or when we see a red flag and we get curious, either way, as Ashley said, it's going to be about information. And then she even spoke to the next step of like, okay, so I stayed and then I had to work through a lot of discomfort. There isn't shame, or it might feel like there's shame in that discomfort because I ignored the red, quote unquote, I ignored the red flag and I did it anyway. Or I heard my body. I wanted to still see. I wanted it to be different.
And that's okay.
And exactly admitting that part of like, I wanted it to be different. And I'm so hopeful about love that I'm going to try again. Right. And like, but that doesn't mean that that's not going to come with pain, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have done that. right?
I feel like everything you just said was really important. I'm not sure. Rewind and listen to like those last couple minutes, because everything she just said was like very
it's a process.
well done.
It's a process,
Isn't
and
she
that's
amazing?
like, but that's like, but this is why it's important to even have these conversations with our friends, right? And like, Ashley loving balloons and the butterflies and the things, and me being the negative Nance, who, sorry for all the Nancys out there, I'm really sorry, that's unkind. The pessimistic person in this, who's just like, whatever, I'm not going to say what I said I would like someone to do, but it's just, it's Ashley is who Ashley is. And I would not want her to come to my side and not try things in her life and do things in her life because I'm pessimistic about things. I'm not really that pessimistic about love. I love love, but I'm just pessimistic about certain holidays. But like, to give Ashley all of the room for her to be in her life and have her experiences and learn and love those things and receive those things. I want Ashley to have all of that love. And I want to receive love in my way. And I want to feel it in my way. And it's going to be messy. And I'm going to do it, all the wrong ways and all the right ways. But like, what I'm trying to gather more than anything else is a connection to myself. I want to feel like, even if I make decisions that I quote unquote shouldn't, I want to feel like I was all of me was along for the ride.
Yes.
That I didn't leave any part of me behind, and so I think when we first kind of like talked about what we were going to talk about today, it was a very different conversation.
Yeah.
Than what I think has come through. This is what happens with us. But this is why I love this organic process, because I think what I feel like the mission of this conversation has become more than anything else is just compassion for the process.
Yeah.
Of exploring this.
Yeah. And I, as Sara Cate and I were, sharing some personal things, and, I think sometimes it's helpful to hear, like other stories, right? But I also want to just really remind you that, we share these things. It doesn't mean, like, I do know myself really well, and I still have a whole lot to learn. And when I first started this journey, I had no idea what my body felt. And so we always talk about like, okay, it's about like what you're feeling in your body, the relationship with yourself. And it really does just start with the noticing. And I can promise you, from personal experience, from watching Sara Cate's process, from watching my clients' processes, the more you just pause, take a deep breath, notice, acknowledge the truth in it, doesn't mean that you have to move differently right away. Like we've said this whole conversation, the more information you're going to get. I know that to be true, but it does take time, and you don't have to rush it. You don't, this isn't, and some days you're going to feel so good in this process, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I had this huge realization about something I don't like, or whatever it is. And some days it's going to feel like you just were surviving. And that is
a lot of days
human. That's what being human is. Yes. Right. And so,
we are surviving this thing.
Yes. We're here to provide, a perspective from, our personal trajectory and the work we do with clients, and to hopefully allow you to be curious about conversations like this with yourself. Yeah. First, and then in community. And always, 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 we are here as a resource. We have resources listed, and we want this information spread as far as it can be, because we just believe so strongly that we deserve it. So until next time, compassion for the process.
Yes.
Gain your information. And
there's a lot to get.
You can share this with somebody who you think might find it helpful.
Someone who maybe likes French expressions and balloons.
Yes. And loves love.
Because we both do.
We do. We really do.
We really do.
We really do.
And I love you.
Oh, I love you. Okay.
Love day.
Au revoir.
I was waiting.
Okay.
Pins
Bye.
and needles.